And we're back. Maybe we didn't go away. Here's the box office top 10. Number 93, The Substitute.
I should point out that The Substitute was playing it had 4 locations. So one of the things that you always need to point out when this stuff happens is it's playing in 4 locations. Avatar, Way of Water is playing in 651. Mm-hmm. So it's done fine in the locations that it's played in. I like this film. I thought it was a kind of it falls in that tradition of Blackboard Jungle and more recently Casablanca Beat. So I thought it was really interesting. And I'm just pointing out that it's to do with how many places films are playing in.
Number 46, Alice, Darling.
10 locations. So this is the new film by Mary Nye, who is Bill Nye's daughter, who I had the great privilege of...
Oscar-nominated.
Oscar-nominated. You were so thrilled about that, weren't you?
And there's a fantastic photograph of him. Here's a man... He's at a ripe old age, even more than we are, and he's Oscar-nominated. How thrilling is that? That's just fantastic news.
Well, Mary Nye, who's an actor, now this is her directing, and this is a story. This stars Anna Kendrick as a young woman who appears to have a perfect life with a lovely boyfriend who then turns out to be fantastically controlling. And it is a film about an emotionally abusive relationship, which it's marketed very much like a thriller. When I saw it, I didn't know anything about it. And for the first 10 minutes of it, I thought it was a rom-com because it was Anna Kendrick in a coffee bar with her friends. And it had that kind of tone to it. And what I really like about it is the way the tone shifts. I think she's a fine director, and I think we'll see more work from her, impressive work from her in the future.
Just speaking of things that look like rom-coms, I saw on the side of a bus, obviously it's been there for quite a while, an advert for She Said, right?
Yeah.
So... which is a serious drama
by
anyone's reckoning.
Yeah.
But the way it was photographed, which is a photograph of the 2 leading women, the 2 journalists who are trying to uncover the Harvey Weinstein story, made it look like a rom-com.
Well, that would partly, I suspect, be in response to the fact that it tanked in America. And one of the reasons that it tanked in America was that they said people didn't want to watch a harrowing 2-hour drama about Harvey Weinstein.
Okay, well, obviously this bus ad
is trying to say it's not about that. It's these people whose company you'll like.
Exactly. Well, it still looks inappropriate. I'm
not saying it's right. Yeah. I'm just saying I'm sure that was the thinking, the
motivation.
It, yeah.
Number 14 in the top 10, Holy Spider,
which is a really interesting film about. I mean, nominally it's a film about a serial killer, but it's really a film about misogyny and the way in which misogynist culture has at its sharp end murder, but has at its softer end a sort of general acceptance that cleaning up the streets is somehow valid within this culture system. I liked it very much. I know that not everybody does. My colleague Wendy Ide had felt that it had a prurient air to it, which I didn't feel, but I respect Wendy's opinion very much.
Dr. Nima Gadri in Liverpool. Mark and Simon, thank you. And to your producers. Why does producers and the fantastic team who create the show? That's the way basically you get your email onto the pod. Thanks for your Holy Spider review. It's a tough watch, which probably isn't the best choice for a family film, but it's thrilling and so pertinent given current events in Iran.
Yes.
Zahra Amir Ebrahimi has so much raw, nuanced emotion. Mark will remember her performance in the rotoscoped Tehran Taboo. She recently won Best Actress at Cannes, but many don't know how her life was at threat after a jealous ex leaked an intimate video of her. She was forced to flee Iran and has slowly rebuilt her career, but what a talent she is. Few convey the breadth of human tragedy as well as her. Worth watching the film for her alone. Down with the Nazis and up with women, life, freedom. Thank you, Dr. Nima.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that email.
Number 10 in the UK, number 9 in the States, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
And?
Still 30 minutes to go.
So really forever?
Almost certain.
Wakanda Forever.
On and on. Number 9 here, 26 in the States, Strange World.
Done better than I expected. Certainly has done better here than it did in the US, because in the US it lost a large amount of money.
Number 8 in the UK is Tar. Here is, how sometimes people feel very strongly about things. You go, okay, fine. Here's Izzy.
Okay.
She signs it formally of the Philadelphia Orchestra.
Oh, okay.
Mark and Simon, I'm so tired of hearing how convincing Blanchett's performance in Tar is. Reaction to its portrayal of music and conducting among my colleagues has been either 1, unrecognisable, or 2, unrecognisable but perhaps positive for symphony orchestras. Blanchett addressing Dresden Philharmonic by saying, "I'm not a conductor and you are not actors," is rich. Find me a soloist of any kind, any performing art that doesn't know how they look on camera. We're not doubting for or tutoring or accommodating the acting talent of the Natalie Portmans and Kate Blanchetts because we could never act. It's just that one kind of performers, fame and face, sell tickets and duty-free luxury goods and ours do not. Please, just make your Oscar bait film about a tortured genius and their descent into madness, credit the doubles and tutors, and stop insisting that the lead's makeshift talent set or the script's pretentious nitpicking over bowing probably, and tempo are actually convincing and realistic.
Wow.
What's interesting about that is Izzy obviously knows more about it than I do, but if you're deeply immersed in this, there's a difference between a symphony orchestra and a philharmonic orchestra. Well, I don't, because I remember asking this of the good folk at Scala Radio.
Who would know,
and they kind of were suggesting that there isn't really.
Right, okay. But is it a historical thing or something?
I imagine it must be. Okay. People will write in and explain.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That is a ferocious email.
Number 7, although only number 34 in America, Empire of Light. Though Sam Mendes, when he came on the show, he said it's the least attention he's paid to the American market with the movie.
Yes. I think he also said that he wrote it. Fundamentally, what he was saying was he wrote it for himself because it was written during lockdown. And very much like The Fabelmans, which we're going to talk about later on, it's a very personal film by a director remembering his own childhood and sort of celebrating cinema. It's also a film about Britain at a certain period in its history and racism and a whole bunch of other things. I think it's 5 different films, and I like at least 2 of them.
One of the reasons I'm annoyed that Steven Spielberg is not on the show because he's ill is because is to pick up precisely that point, and the fact that Sam Mendes said he'd had a conversation with Spielberg about these movies and the fact that they're making these. It's not a coincidence that they're making these introspective films.
Stephen, if you're listening, this would have been the best interview you didn't do.
Yeah, feel free to come on at any time. Number 6 is A Man Called Otto. Number 5 in America.
I don't think I can say anything better about this film than once again to cite the email from 2 weeks ago. If you haven't heard that show, go back and listen to it. Yeah. There is an email from somebody who was touched so profoundly by this film that I think it would justify the filmmaker's career.
Number 5 in the UK, Roald Dahl's Matilda the Musical, still
hanging on in there. I mean, I did a show just recently. We played at the end, we are revolting children living. That is that's almost as much of an earworm as wall, big as a toll.
Which, if you're wondering what on earth that's about, is Empire State Human by Human League. But don't listen to it if you want to think of any other melody for the next week.
Yeah, which I'm not going to now.
Number 4 here, number 11 in America, Whitney Houston, I Want to Dance with Somebody.
I said I was surprised by how much I was moved by it. Weirdly, by how much I was moved by the power ballads, which, frankly, I hadn't been a fan of when they were first out. But I think the film does a fairly solid job of, leading us through that story.
Number 3 here, 15 in America, is Babylon.
And on.
Now, I've got an interesting email from, now I think I'm going to say Iwana, but
okay.
I think, anyway, the name is Iona. And then
I would say Iona.
But then it says rhymes with iguana.
Oh, well, that's but obviously.
Is that Iwana or would that be Iwana?
Iguana.
From London.
Iguana. I-O-N-A.
I-O-A.
I-O-A-N-A. Oh, sorry. Iwana.
Iwana.
Rhymes with iguana. Yes. Yes, okay. Very clear. Yeah.
All right. Iwana from London. Thank you. Dear Manny and Nellie, as a Damien Chazelle featuring Justin Hurwitz aficionado, I was very excited to watch Babylon.
And on.
I left the cinema on Friday with my jaw literally dropped towards the floor. What had I just watched in the best way possible? Okay. Imagine my surprise upon listening to the latest episode of the podcast and hearing Mark say he hated every single thing that I loved about Babylon.
Yeah, well.
Sure, at its core, it is nothing more than a collection of overly choreographed set pieces, and stunning ones at that. The exhausting explosion of colour, bodies, wealth and grit was one of the most impressive showcases of production design I've seen in recent years. I'll admit it, I'm a young person with little patience to complete my cinema literacy by watching films from nearly a century ago. Babylon is a good, if perverse, way for younger audiences to familiarise themselves with the history of cinema. The complete lack of rules of the silent film period was fascinating to see. The rollover laughing scene of Nellie filming her first talkie is sure to stick with me for months. Beyond the set pieces, I think Babylon did a decent job of painting some characters, in particular Jack and Manny, with emotional depth and character arcs I was genuinely invested in. As for the ridiculously corny epilogue montage, I did roll my eyes, but it also reminded me that we are not just observers of history, but rather active participants. Love it or hate it, Avatar is a milestone in the history of cinema. Doesn't it just warm your heart to think... There's a little left turn there. Mm-hmm. Doesn't it just warm your heart to think about the incredible technical advancements humans are capable of coming up with just for the sake of entertainment? As a final note, I have not stopped listening to the soundtrack all weekend long. Another instant classic from Hurwitz.
Yeah, well, it's up for an Oscar, and it is one of the 3 Oscar nominations, the other one being production design and costume design, which ties in with what you were saying.
So, Iwana, thank you very much indeed.
May I just ask, Iwana, and please do follow this up, have you seen Singing in the Rain? And the reason I ask is, if you think that the Nellie Leroy doing her first talkie scene is really funny, have you seen Singing in the Rain? That's not a rhetorical question. I'd be genuinely interested, because what really bothers me about Babylon is that all its best moments are ripped off Singing in the Rain.
Number 2 here, number 3 in the States is M3GAN. Count Geekler on our YouTube channel. I really like this one. It does everything you expect it to do, but with a nice edge of satire, and also at heart quite an affecting story about loss and parenting. Simon Norton says, I've got no idea what I saw. The closest I can come is to say it was like one of those awful modern remakes of a much-loved 80s film that actually wasn't made in the first place. Not sure I quite understand your review, Simon. But anyway, you were quite impressed with M3GAN.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting film. I mean, it's not really a horror film. It is it's a satire, and it's obviously in the tradition of things like, well, we said Dead of Night and the Chucky films. But I thought it did what it did well. We had a very interesting email last week from someone who was saying, you need to give credit to the performer who was playing M3GAN. Amy Donald, I believe, is her name. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not gory enough, but that's absolutely fine. That is to do with the fact that it's not really a horror film. It is a satire.
And the box office number 1 here, as in the States, is Avatar: The Way of Water. Just a slightly, and the Oscar-nominated Avatar: The Way of Water.
Yeah.
Tim sends this email just for a slightly different take to avoid the rehashing of previous weeks. So the first Avatar, says Tim, was probably the film I've come nearest to walking out of. Uh-huh. And I haven't yet seen the second one, and I don't really want to, in fact, but I'm going because it is a vast, bloated blockbuster, which is a retelling of the story of what imperialist colonists did to Native Americans and other indigenous peoples, and makes it absolutely clear that the colonists are unambiguously the bad guys and that what they did was horrible. And not just that, it's a film which, stealing a quote, gets normal-ass Marvel watching white people in Ohio to stand up and cheer for the Viet Cong, end of quote. There are many, many films that have made the same points. I've seen a lot of them. But have there been any with even a tiny fraction of the reach of Avatar? I mean, look what happened when someone dared to make a Star Wars episode where it turned out that the hero wasn't the hero because of who their ancestors were. And yet, here is this huge, dumb blockbuster which will be seen by hundreds of millions of people and which is, quotes, and I react physically when people say this, on the right side of history, end of quote. I'll go and see it so that Cameron gets to make more of this. He's not preaching to me, but he is preaching a good message, and that message is being widely heard. I'll take that, says Tim.
I mean, yes. I mean, yes, it's like it is the as I said from the first time, it's broadly anti-colonial, it's a very metaphor. It works very many ways. It's very fluid. It's just a bit like, but yes, and as we've said before, and I will say it again, I can't stand Avatar: The Way of Water, but it has tent-poled the heck out of the box office.
To tent-pole is a verb, and if it saves cinema, amongst all the other things, then thank heavens for that.
Precisely.
Thanks very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed making it. While you're here, check out all the other videos because they're cool too, aren't they?
Yeah, and if you want to keep up to date with everything Kermode and Mayo's Take, then check out our social channels.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
I mean, I would. I have done.
Excellent.